If you just look at the title of this video, I broke silly laws in front of the police. It's, you know, an interesting title for sure. It's definitely optimized for humans, which I think is one of the most important things when it comes to coming up with a title. But then when you look at the thumbnail itself, it starts to create all these questions in your mind. He's holding a beer. Is it against the law to drink beer? He's holding a cow. Is it actually illegal to have a cow? And he's in this, obviously clearly in the streets of London here, and there's a police officer right there. So it's asking all these questions as soon as you see this thumbnail. When you click the video, however, he confirms the thumbnail instantly. When you see that thumbnail and you click it, you're greeted immediately with the exact same image in real life, in video here. This is video form of the thumbnail. Brilliant, and all credit due to Max Fosh, who came up with this idea and this concept. My name is David Altizer, and I am a thumbnail designer. I designed this thumbnail for a creator named Max Fosh, and the video now has over 7 million views. I work for creators such as Curtis Connor, Max Fosh, Drew Gooden, and more. I went from being a full-time YouTuber and filmmaker over the last 5 years to now being a full-time thumbnail designer. And then within a month, I went from no experience being a thumbnail designer to working with Curtis Connor, Max Fosh, Hayden Hillier-Smith.
Like the cool part about the thumbnail dude I've been working with too, it's like that's like a whole new thing for me. Which is like having someone else.
Dude, the thumbnail guy, like cottage industry of our space is pretty incredible. I don't even understand what they're doing.
In this video, I'm going to be going over how I built this thumbnail, and this video is sponsored by Logitech. So let's dive into how I designed the thumbnail for Max Fosh. I'm gonna start turning off all the layers and show you some of the magic that was going on. Here's the original asset provided to me by Max. As you can see, it's a great picture and not too far away from the final version, but there's a lot of things that I needed to do. You can see, first off, the police logo is not readable here. The eye line of the police officer and Max is a little off. The beer mug is not very big. It's not super interesting as well because it's essentially almost empty, so I had to fill that up. I don't like seeing the microphone on his vest. I don't like the crap that's on his vest there. The cow is a little bit small for the image. It's hard to kind of get the whole picture. Now, honestly, if I were to crop this and essentially do almost nothing to it, it would probably still be, I mean, it's a great idea. That's why having a solid idea is so important. But as you can see, when I turn all the things on again and then turn off the original asset, you can see how much has changed here. I had to essentially scale the cow up, clean the cow up, remove the tag, clean up the background, all these little things that really take it to the next level and essentially perfect that thumbnail and have everything, you know, balanced compositionally. If you're not familiar with the rule of thirds, I'm going to turn that on here. You can see with the original asset, things are just not lining up properly, but when I turn it off and look at the final asset, you can see how it lines up so beautifully with the rule of thirds. We've got Max's head lined up with the top right rule of third. We got the police officer's head lining up with the left-hand side, balancing perfectly with the right-hand side. We've got the cow dead center. Her eyes are dead center, looking into the lens. And it's scaled in such a way that even the weight of the cow here is balanced with kind of the weight of the street, the trees, and the police officer here. It's just balanced compositionally really well, and there's something you can just feel about it. If you're not familiar with the rule of thirds, check out my free asset that you can download on my website. Go to learnthumbnails.com. And you can see free YouTube thumbnail guide. If you hit download, you can download this overlay that includes the rule of thirds, the play icon, the rounded corners that are there with YouTube videos, as well as a time code that is lined up exactly the way it looks on YouTube. That helps you with your composition when you're building a thumbnail, and I give this away for free. So download it on my website if you're interested. I use it on all of my thumbnail work. So the very first thing that I did with this thumbnail is clean up the background. I didn't get the assets from Max in the way that I would prefer, which would be a clean background, clean Max, clean cow, clean police officer. But that's the beauty of these AI tools built into Photoshop now. I don't need that. I can actually make it work with the asset that's provided. So let me show you, I'll do it in reverse, how I would do that. So here's the original asset. I simply hit select subject. And instead of going up here and pushing the lasso tool, I'm going to use the MX Creative keypad and push the lasso button right here. Boom. When I push that, I'm able to, by pushing Shift, add areas that I want to select. Essentially, I want to select everything but the street, everything but the trees. I can even be a little bit rough and dirty with it and not select perfectly. So I'm just pushing Shift on everything that I need to add to the selection. And that's about it. So, oh, the collar there needs to be fixed as well. Let me add that. Okay. I'm gonna go up to Help and go to Expand. Right there, modify expand, right? I'm gonna push that and expand by 18 pixels, that's fine. That just, again, expands outside of my selection a little bit. So we have a little bit of a edge over the perfect edge of Max. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need to basically, we need the selection to be a little bit over the edge, because if it's right on the edge of this cloth here, for example, maybe the generative fill will remove everything, but then there'll be like a little sliver of cloth left, because maybe just like a little area that wasn't selected. So by expanding it out like that, it gives me a little bit more room. So I'm going to hit generative fill. I'm just not going to type anything. I'm just going to leave it blank and hit enter. And let's see what happens. Okay. That is interesting. It added a sign there. Let's see what this looks like. That's much better, much better. And that's it. So I can hit generative fill as many times as I want. I can do this 18 times if I really wanted to. This section, the number 2 generation, looks the best, but I don't like this lamppost. And that's one of the things I didn't like about the original image, is the lamp post got in the way of the police officer. So let's remove that next. Again, my lasso tool is still selected. I'm going to draw around the lamp post like so, hit generative fill, hit enter. And as you can see, I can really put anything here. And this keyboard shortcut is one of my favorite shortcuts that I'm going to show you in a second. As soon as this generation is done, hopefully it removed the lamppost, and it did. Look at that. Now, one of my favorite things about generative fill is the fact that it takes into account the color science of the image, the bokeh, the blur. All these things have never been possible before, and I still don't take this for granted. The fact that, here, let me merge those together. I'm just going to right click and hit merge. In fact, that's a good one to put on a keystroke. I never use the spot healing brush, which is what it has right now. Let's change that to merge layers. That's a button that I push all the time. Now, I love this keyboard, the MX Keys Mini in particular from Logitech. It's phenomenal. It's the same size as your laptop keyboard. I'm not a huge fan of the numpad keyboards. I think it kind of gets in the way. And this thing in particular, the MX Creative keypad, this thing kind of gives you what you're missing if you do like having a numpad with specific buttons and keystrokes. I'm using the Logi Options Plus app here to configure everything. And as you can see, when I go into the MX Creative keypad on the software, I can customize my keys however I want. Now, this button here is like the general profile. So right now I can have mute on and off when I push this button. You've got volume control here as well. So I can push the buttons to adjust my volume control, or this toggle wheel thing, the MX Creative dial pad, this also controls my volume, which is really nice. You can have custom button control per app with the Creative keypad. And as you can see, all these other apps that I have here have support. We've got all these other Adobe apps. We've got things like Discord and Balatro. Oh, that'd be interesting, using this for gaming. But I'm going to dive into a profile for Photoshop. So inside of the Logi Plus app, I have all these different merge options, but none of those are exactly what I want. I want the Command E thing. So I'm just going to do my own custom keystroke, keyboard shortcut. I'm going to drag that on top, and then it says press key combination Command E. And I can go in here and edit the icon. So this is going to be some sort of merge thing. So let's see, what would be an icon that kind of symbolizes that? These default icons are not what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go down to get more icons. And here you can see so many different icons available to you from Logitech. I'm going to install the Photoshop by Logic one, the Photoshop straight from there. But then what is this? This is like Sideshow PX. So these are a little bit more colorful icons. I'll install that. So let's see, is there any merge layers? That's a good one. That's pretty much what I need. I'm gonna hit save, and then it's a little messy there. Let's get rid of the text completely. Save, boom. And just like that, we now have a really great icon that says merge layers on it. So now when I switch back over into Photoshop, I'm gonna select these two layers, I'm gonna hit that, and boom, it did exactly what I wanted. It merged those two layers together. And you can customize this to your heart's content. You can do any combination of things. So once I've removed my foreground and have a nice clean background, I was then able to go through the process here of cutting out each individual layer. Cut out the cow here with that tag, and so it's adding to that. So you have to just use some trial and error with generative fill, but this is what I was able to come up with, and it looks great to me. We then kind of cleaned up the edges here. You can see again, I wasn't perfectly cutting this out. And once you add generative fill to those corners and those edges, it just totally blends it in. Again, all I'm doing is selecting this little edge like that, hitting generate, oops, hitting generate like so. And what it does is it, again, just takes this asset, takes the background, blends it together, adds the hairs, adds the blur to the background. It's insane. So yeah, there you go. You can see how it blends into the background so well. And what I was saying there about you want to make sure that everything's lined up as best as it can before you do all this generation is because check this out. If I were to say, say the client says, actually, could we move the cow up a little bit? Well, if I do that, you see all this stuff that came with it when I select all those layers there, the ear, the hair, all that. It kind of, messes it up because generative fill is actually adding a little bit of the background to that. Now, if you like how this was generated, like for example, the ear and whatnot, what you could do is now that I have this button here, merge layers, it's perfect. I'll add that like so. And so now I've got a free floating cow. Put that on a shirt. So this is the best spot for it because that's where the generative fill was designed. But what you can do is, and I'll turn off the background so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. What you can do is then go into your magnetic lasso tool or the quick select tool, which I've got here, and select the background of the generative fill layer and just hit delete and cut that part out. Because I do like what it did with the ear, it got rid of the tag, which is what I was trying to go for here. I like the build of the cow up here, it looks great. And that quick selection tool does a really good job of selecting those areas. Command D, by the way, is how you deselect, or you can just go over here and click deselect. But if I put like a really bright, let's do like a bright pink or a bright red background here behind it, you see those little edges. It doesn't perfectly get those little edges. Let me go to my lasso tool like that. And you can just select that area that is still left over. You gotta make sure that that's not there because that's some extra, oops, that's some extra mess that's there. So I'm gonna select that little sliver up there, right? Boom. So anyways, you could do that. That way you have a free floating cow now that you can make bigger, you can move it around, and it's the way you like it. I've made her the size I like. This whole half here has been generatively created because Max was originally in front of the cow. Max was standing in front of the cow, so I don't have this area that Max is obstructing here of the cow. So I had to use generative fill to create this. So all this area here is AI. And then so you can start to see what I did here with the police officer. When you cut things out crudely, like the way I do, here you can see how I cut the police officer out and there's little edges here that just look digital and not good. That's where generative fill comes in again. I just would select this area right around his cheek and just hit enter, and then it starts to blend things in. I blended in his mouth there, corner of the jacket there. You can see the hat, the hair, all that stuff. Look at the hat. Look at that on and off. Isn't that crazy? I'll just show you again what I would do because you're not really seeing the selected area. I'm just going over like this. letting the edge of the hat be selected, hit generate, and then it blends that into the background. Sometimes, I mean, that's a really great selection here. How many times do I have to do that? So 1, 2, 3. Yeah, all those are good. Sometimes you have to give it a little bit of a prompt if it doesn't know what's going on. For example, I'll do stuff for Curtis Connor and he's got really curly hair, and I'll do that to the edges of his hair. So what I'll do is I'll just go in there and type hair and then hit enter, and then it usually fixes it. Sometimes you kind of have to hand hold the AI a little bit to understand what it's looking at. And look at that. I mean, before and after, you can see how messy the corners were of this. Again, the generative fill here. I had to do this 9 times to get the one that I liked. But you can see that's, that works well. And then over here with Max, we've got the microphone, we've got the junk on his vest, we've got an empty beer mug. You could start to see what I'm doing here. This one was continue red vest. So I selected this area that was cut out. Boom, added the red vest. Continue red vest here. Boom. I didn't like that little white sliver of his shirt showing. This is me removing all of the crap on his vest and on his body because we moved the cow in this way so that the composition was better. Part of the original ear is actually there. So you can see, boom, with generative fill, I was able to remove all those elements. That's me simply going like this, selecting the microphone, hitting shift, which is adding. You can see the little plus sign on the lasso tool. That's me adding this area and the cow, etc. And then hitting generate, and it completely cleans all that stuff up. Now, this is probably one of my most favorite parts of this layout is the beer mug that was able to be generated with generative fill. I mean, look at this. This is the 18th generation. I did this 18 times to get the one I liked, and you can see when I cycle through all these different beer mugs, how different they were. Some are good, some are not. I mean, that one, what the heck is going on there? That one's not bad, but it still looks really fake. That one, I think I was gonna go with that one potentially, but when I saw this one, I just knew that this was the one. You've got the frosted mug. You can see parts of the beer left over on the actual mug. And the thing that blows my mind is that you can see through the glass. You can actually see his vest through it. How smart is this stuff, man? So look at the prompt that I ended up typing. Oktoberfest German 1 liter beer mug full of beer. Those are all the things that I ended up having to type in here to give me this result. But if I turn it off, I'll kind of recreate this. So I'll just copy that same prompt that I typed out from before. All I did was select this beer mug, hit generative fill. I'll type what I just typed by pasting that in, hit generate, and we'll see what happens. And the reason that I wanted the one that I selected is because it tells a story. It really tells that story of he's drunk, he's drinking on the streets of London in front of a police officer. And to me, that was more compelling. And that, again, when you're thinking about a thumbnail, how can you tell that story with the thumbnail to get people to click, to have that sense of mystery? With the title and that beer mug, it really helps tell that conflicting story of like, wait, what? That's illegal? You can't do that, So I think because I selected a smaller area than before, it basically made a teeny tiny mug. So let's kill that. That didn't work. I'm gonna basically select the size that I want. Okay, so now it's doing some weird stuff. And you can see I like how it says Oktoberfest on there. That's interesting. It's not perfect by any means, and that's why I ended up having to do this 18 times. But don't give up. Like, honestly, sometimes you might give up too soon, and all it needed was just one more generation and you would have found the one that you wanted that actually ended up being the right one. So again, you can see I did this so many times, and you just kind of start to trust the system a little bit because it can do it. It's possible. And I knew it was possible, and we found it here. But again, like I told you, I had to do this 18 times to get the one that ended up working. But let me show you the last step that I like to do here, which is this hotkey, which I talked about earlier. It's this kind of mix down of everything. It's a hotkey, Command Option Shift E. And what that does is it merges all your visible layers into one layer. I'm gonna push that on my little Logitech button, boom, just like so. I'm gonna go into my filter, Camera Raw filter. And because all those layers are now essentially just one layer, I can start to adjust things very specifically within my Camera Raw filter. If you go over here to mask, you can see it actually already selected these two different people. So I'm gonna go and select person 2, which is Max. And let's see, what do I need to actually adjust? I'm gonna do the entire person. Let me just create that. And you can see I can actually brighten him up, darken him down, all sorts of things. You know, I think his skin, you know, is a little pale. He is a pale person. Uh, sorry, Max, if you're watching this, but I like to add just a little bit of warmth to it by adjusting the color temperature, maybe just a little bit of saturation, maybe pulling the highlights down a little bit on him as well. Maybe turning the exposure down. Yeah, that's looking a lot more a little better there. Pulling the blacks down just like so. That added a little bit of color to him, just kind of giving a little bit more saturation. I'm gonna crank my contrast, adjust my highlights. I like to pull those down because I don't want things to be overexposed. Boost the shadows up a little bit. The beer mug could get a little bit of attention, so I'm gonna change the mask to brush and paint that. A little too big. Let me make it a little bit smaller. Create mask, brush, make it smaller, paint that area, boost the exposure on that specific area. That'll give it a nice brightness. I'm doing things here that I actually ended up that I didn't do for the final, you'll see. So I'm actually making it look a little bit better than it really looks on Max's channel. Let me do it again. I'm gonna just select brush, just paint this area here. I think there's some highlights that are a little too bright. Pull the highlights down a bit, add some contrast, boost the shadows a bit, play around with things. Might be a little too much. Crank the sat on that. And then one of my favorite things that I like to do is adjusting the vignette. So I'll go to effects, go to vignette, and I can add a slight vignette. That just brings the eyes into the center. We want people to see Max. We want people to see the cow. And as you can see, when I do that, we are losing a bit of Max. It's making his face a little bit too dark. So let's do that a different way. So I'm gonna hit OK without the vignette. I'm gonna push this button again, my mix down button that I put on the Logitech, go back to Camera Raw, go to filter, go to vignette, add the vignette that I want, forgetting about the fact that his face is a little darker now. Now I'm gonna go over to the eraser tool, which, you know what, that's one of the tools that I use all the time. I don't use the size tool that is here by default. So let's change that real quick in the Logitech options key. So let's change this. I'm gonna delete it, delete action. I'm gonna go to eraser and drag that on right there. Boom, perfect. I don't even have to hit save. It just automatically adjusts. I'm gonna switch back over. So now I'll just push the eraser tool, boom, like that. And look at that. I can still make his face pop because I'm essentially just erasing that. Now, I will say, I think the eraser tool is too harsh. So I'm gonna undo that. Go here. Yep, I'm gonna change my hardness to 0. Now it's nice and smooth. Just like so. So I'll zoom out. Might be a little too much again. I don't like the kind of white in the building. It kind of shows what I'm doing a little bit, shows my work a little bit too much. Let's do export as. So that's its own special thing. Let's do that. Yes, beautiful. Oh, cool. I didn't have to delete it. I can just drag and drop it. Okay, so sorry about that earlier. I was deleting things. You could just drag it in. So, okay, let's say I'm done now. I hit export as. Oh, that's great. That saves me a couple steps. I love that. Honestly, that's super useful. I'm gonna go to quality 7, hit export, save it, Max Fosh, new version on my desktop. Then Max is going to upload that to his YouTube channel and get 7 million views. That's how you do it. And if you're interested in the MX Creative Keypad, I do recommend these tools for especially beginners, if you don't know all the hotkeys, this is really powerful. But even for a pro like myself, I could see myself using this much more as I continue to experiment with it, get it dialed in exactly how I like it. I mean, even just saving me the time of hitting the export button, of going to File, Export, Export as. I know that seems like not that big of a deal, but the fact that I'm saving 3 or 4 seconds a day multiple times by just pushing this one button makes it useful to me. So I'm going to start using this much more on all my work. Plus, you could use this for many other apps, not just Photoshop. So very powerful tool. Check it out in the link down below. If you enjoyed this, check out my website, learnthumbnails.com. You can book a consultation call with me. You could sign up to be on the wait list for my course, as well as download the Learn Thumbnails overlay template that includes the rule of thirds, the play button, the time code, all those things. It's so important to have that when you're designing your thumbnails because it does look different when you're on YouTube. This little play icon, when you text it out to somebody, it's going to have this little play icon on it. So I liked how the cow's in the middle there, but I don't really turn that on that often. But you can see the rounded corners, you can see the time code. You want to make sure not to cover up that time code. If you enjoyed this video, I have another one breaking down how I made a thumbnail for Curtis Connor that has several million views as well. Curtis is actually in the video as well, which is kind of fun. And I'm going to be doing more thumbnail breakdowns and more thumbnail education on this channel, so make sure to subscribe.